Do you think print-on-demand sellers can still compete these days if they're not using AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that obviously you can, try to compete if you're not going to use AI. But the issue with that is that as a seller, you're competing with all of the other sellers who might choose to use AI, at least in some aspect of their business. And so if you're going to choose not to use it, obviously you're kind of setting yourself up to a disadvantage where you're competing with everyone who does. And so, yes, obviously you can, try to compete, but I would just keep a little bit of an open mind in terms of, using it in some aspect of your business, just because even from a speed perspective, sellers that do use AI are just more efficient. They get more done, and typically they can make higher quality products in the long run using AI.
I kind of imagine it a little bit like if you're having a race and you have the slowest car in the race. Like, yes, you might like the car better, it looks better, or you like driving manual, but everyone else has got more horsepower, got an automatic transmission. You're just shooting yourself in the foot. I guess you can still get sales if you're not using AI to design, right? But it takes so much longer. There's not much sense really to go on the manual route.
Yeah, and like you just said, there's not one right way to use AI, because you can use it not only to make designs, but you can also use it to help you with the SEO in your listings, or to help you do research and things like that. So it's not just one, final way to use it. Obviously, I think the designing is the part where AI can take a lot of, creative work that you might not know how to do, and it can help you do it or do it for you. But there's still other areas that you can use it and put it to work, even without replacing the creativity entirely.
I think in regards to design, the only time I wouldn't use AI is maybe if I'm only doing text-based stuff, like simple text-based designs. In that case, I think AI actually makes it kind of harder, because then you have to remove background and upscale. I think there's smarter ways to do text only. But yeah, if you're implementing graphics, that's faster. But even if you're doing only text designs, I think doing research with AI or coming up with ideas with AI, like you're still going to want to implement AI somewhere into your process if you want to be able to compete with everyone else that does, in my opinion. What are currently your favorite AI tools?
That's a great question. It has changed a little bit over time, but my all-time favorite is ChatGPT. It's like such a standard, but I think that I guess a few of the changes that they've made, where it now remembers so much more about your past conversations, it knows so much more about you. And the more intentional you are with your kind of prompts and your inputs, the more intentional it is back with you and in its responses. And so that's probably my all-time favorite. I use it every single day, at least a few times a day, even if it's just for simple questions. They just launched their new, I don't know if you saw it, but like I think yesterday or the day before, they launched that new browser. So I played around with that a little bit, but that's my favorite, just because also as like an Apple user, it's so integrated into the Mac, where I just hit like Command space is I think the like hotkey on the Mac, and you can type in a question right to it, and then in like seconds it'll pop back up with your response. And so I use that specific feature all the time. Like,
okay. I don't know if you can do that on Windows, because I'm on a Windows. I hadn't heard of that, but that does sound pretty cool. So it's kind of like almost like a little virtual assistant, like you're asking it questions all the time, or using it for research, ideas, stuff like that, more so than generating images. Is that what you mean? Or
yeah, exactly. So, specifically in terms like high level, my favorite AI has got to be chat. And so, yeah, for overall productivity and getting stuff done, that's, for me, the fastest way to leverage it. But if you're, talking about images and making designs, I think Midjourney is a classic, and it's great depending on what you're trying to make specifically. But I've also recently been playing around with the Nano Banana model, which I'm sure you're familiar with. That one's a ton of fun, and it's really good. And it seems to be really good at the type of graphics that sell well. I'm personally more of an Etsy seller. That's where I kind of got my start, and that's what I mostly talk about on my channel. But it tends to replicate the Etsy graphic aesthetic really well. Compared to other tools, you have to be very, you have to be a lot more descriptive to get that style of graphic. Whereas the Nano Banana model, from what I've seen in my testing, like it can get it a little bit easier. You can kind of skip some of those extra prompting steps.
Yeah, you're definitely right. There's a bit of a difference between the marketplaces, like in terms of what the graphics should look like or what the customer expects, I guess. And Etsy is quite specific in that case. And the tools, they definitely have a different feel as well. Like Midjourney, if you put the Midjourney graphic next to Chat, next to Nano, and if, like us two, you've been looking at thousands of AI images over the past year, then you can probably tell the difference. And yeah, Nano is also really, really fast and doing things in bulk with Nano. I don't know if you've tried it in bulk much. Super easy. I don't know how Midjourney is these days. I've not used it in ages. Can you use that quite easily in bulk?
So I'm not sure about bulk necessarily, but they did add a draft mode, which essentially will generate lower resolution images really, really fast. So it's very, very quick, but one of my strifes with Midjourney is kind of their like layout, where as you're generating images on their website, it just fills up your image generation tray. So when you want to go find something, you have to scroll all the way down and then pick it out and then make your edits to it. So if you go too fast, like you can bury good designs or products that you might have created down below. I haven't tried the Nano Banana bulk mode as much, so I'll have to give that a try. But yeah, as far as Midjourney, like I get why. I think it does a specific thing well. Like it does like large prints really well. It makes really high quality images. But yeah, like you said, getting that vibe, those clip art graphics that are classic on Etsy, like those hand illustrated type graphics, I think you get better results and you get them quicker using Nano Banana.
It's interesting that you still use Midjourney a lot because from what I know, not many people are kind of still loyal to it, at least in the print-on-demand world. I think a lot of people have kind of moved on to either Chat or now Nano. Kittle has a lot of AI models built in. Ideogram is extremely popular. So I think I want to dig in a little bit deeper there of why you still choose Midjourney over something like Ideogram, for example, or over Kittle.
Well, one of the reasons is, one of the main features that I like about Midjourney is their Explore feature. And so you can find a lot of the times, and I have this problem when I go to, create anything, is what is the prompt that I need to use? And so, for example, with ChatGPT, you typically have to upload a reference design, get it to give you a prompt, and then you can either give that prompt straight back or you create a new chat and then give it the prompt, because otherwise it might reference it too closely, right? So you have to create that new chat window, and that's just a lot of steps. It's doable and it can get great results. Like Chat can also generate without the background. It does that pretty well. Just those little things are kind of nice, but the Explore page in Midjourney has a pretty cool feature where you can obviously just start typing in keywords similar to the type of graphic that you're trying to create. And when you do that, you're able to see images that other users have generated and right inside of Midjourney. And keep in mind, since like you don't want to copy anyone's art directly, but in Midjourney, all of the stuff is like in that Explore page, it's all commercial, it's all free use. Like anyone can use those images. So you can check the prompt, you can use those prompts, and you can drag in your style reference images all from that Explore page, which can make it a lot faster. Again, it really depends on the type of graphic you're trying to make. And I think that's where like having multiple models really comes into play. For example, I wouldn't necessarily use Nano Banana to generate something like a poster print because I think Midjourney is just going to handle it much better. Midjourney it's able to do like those kind of style images, those big, full, complete posters really well, whereas something like Nano Banana I think does better at the graphics, at the elements of a graphic for vectors and things of that style a little bit better.
I also think sometimes when people ask me, what's the best AI for POD, I always think there's not really an answer to that. Like, yes, there's one that'll be faster. Yes, there's one that might be easier to use, but the best one for you is the one that fits the style you need to get for the niche. Like you said, it's not, you wouldn't really want to do a poster with Nano probably, because there's another tool that can do it a lot better. And I think generally with AI tools, your choice or your preference should come down to two different things. It's the style. Does the style suit you or who you're designing for? And two, is it easy enough for you to use? Because you personally, you find ChatGPT a little bit annoying, right? You have to upload a reference, get a prompt, start a new chat. It is a little bit tedious, whereas Midjourney is probably a lot faster for you because you're just used to it. You've been loyal to it over the years. So it makes sense for you to use that. I haven't used Midjourney in probably like 2 years, so it doesn't make sense for me to use it, right? So
Yeah,
it really depends on, I think, your personal situation. But yeah, most of the models, they can all create really good designs that will sell. It just depends on your target audience, I guess, as well. Once you've got the graphics, though, you usually have that tedious task of removing background, upscaling, or vectorizing, whatever it is. How do you deal with that?
Yep, that's like, no matter what AI tool you use, it saves you a ton of time in creating it, but then you have to figure out how to use it. So, it really depends, like you just said, what the graphic is and what the purpose is. It depends how you need to use the graphic. So for example, if you need to vectorize it, you're going to have to take a different process than if you just need to upscale and remove the background. So one other reason I like Midjourney, for example, is you can upscale it and you can get pretty high quality images right inside the editor. Mm-hmm. And it does make it like high enough quality that you can use on a print product.
Even on a t-shirt? Do they have like a 4x upscaler at this point? Or
I'm not sure if it's 4x, but I ordered a sample t-shirt just to see what the quality was. And I didn't notice any like artifacts or any blurring around the edges or anything. It was pretty sharp. So
okay, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good. Well, also, like we just said, ChatGPT can remove the background. I think that what becomes really annoying is maybe vectorizing, turning, like if you have a graphic that you need to vectorize, that can be frustrating. And yeah, removing a background also depending on the art style. If it's kind of like a watercolor graphic, for example, it's going to be a lot harder to get the background removed without making a really harsh edge, or sometimes it just will. So, but in terms of how I do it, it first depends on the exact design, and then I'll try kind of my default tool for it, which right now I've been using. It's called Recraft AI. I'm not sure if you heard of that one.
Yep.
So
yep.
That one does a pretty good job. It's got like all of those three tools. It's got upscale, remove background, and vectorizer, all inside of a similar like artboard that you'd find in Kittle or Figma or Canva, because it's a similar kind of design board and it's all in one place, which is really nice. If I try and do it in Canva, they have a good background remover, but then you can't really vectorize that well. So that's where it's like, it's hard to find one tool that does all of them really, really well. And you'll notice some models have a really good vectorizer, and a different tool that also can vectorize might do it totally different. Like it might just, it has a different algorithm or something. So it's hard to do that. So I say like, you got to try, like my default is Recraft, and then I'll kind of swap to a different tool if I'm not getting the result that I like.
It does have a really good vectorizer. I tested it a while back, and can even do gradients, which I think is usually a struggle if you are vectorizing files. A lot of the vectorizers, they just ruin the gradients, whereas Recraft, I think, has that built in, which is pretty cool. Is there kind of a way for you to do it in bulk if you have like 100 files that all need to be upscaled and background removed, or would you then still pull them into Recraft and kind of do it in there?
I'm a big believer in creating batches of products, because I think that having a large quantity of listings and products specifically with the print on demand business. And I think you mostly like you also sell merch by Amazon, so I'm sure it's a similar story over there. You need a lot of listings. I tend to, when I'm creating something like a T-shirt, for example, I tend to create elements of designs, and then I'll use those elements to create multiple versions of the design. So I'm not necessarily creating entire designs for T-shirts just with AI. You can do that, and I've gotten good results with that. But I'll tend to, for example, like let's say you're making Halloween products, I'll make ghosts or pumpkins or like, cats or bats or something. And then I'll use those and go create a bunch of versions of that design. And I'll use those for the batch instead of creating an entire design just using the AI. So to answer your question, I don't find myself needing to kind of bulk background remove or bulk vectorize that often. I tend to kind of do it a little bit different of a way where I'm using AI to create a portion of the graphic, and then I'll reuse those little elements several times.
That makes sense. Yeah. So you have less graphics, but you reuse them with like different elements, different text, and therefore that's how you kind of do things at scale, rather than just having 100 AI designs, turning them into print ready and just uploading. That makes sense. I literally just did that before we started this interview. I had a batch of graphics for a niche, and I will upload them on their own to test if they work on their own, but I've also added like different pieces of text to them to kind of get more out of them. Do you have a preference or something from your experience, like regarding adding text to graphics? Does that tend to do better for you than just standalone?
Yeah, for sure. I almost all of my sales, I think, have some text in them. And like all of the products that I've sold have almost all of them. Like some of them are just a design, but it tends that like, I think part of the problem with just the design is that it makes it easier for people to kind of rip it off or make a similar version of that product. So then, there's a little more saturation that way, just with a single design. But when you add text to it, it also is like a way to get more variations out of the graphic. So like I just talked about, like I'm creating a little graphic and then I'll do it with a bunch of different texts. So I'll test it with a bunch of different kind of slogans on that same product. I have definitely found, even to this day, some of my best selling products are just text. Like nothing fancy, just like black and white text on a black t-shirt, white text on a black t-shirt, white text, gray t-shirt. I think still, and that's one of the interesting things is like people just like, a funny saying or a saying that, matches their personality. And obviously like they like little graphics, and maybe that's partly the Etsy demographic. I know that the shoppers who buy products on Amazon and the shoppers that buy products on eBay, they end up buying slightly different looking products. Like the aesthetic is not the exact same. And so I think that it's partly just because I've been a long-term Etsy seller that I maybe create for that profile a little bit more. Like I maybe tailor my designs to that a little bit more, but yeah, that's what I found.
I think most of the people that I've asked this question, they all either say text only or text plus graphic. I can't remember anyone who said, for me, the best sellers are just graphics on their own. They can sell, and I'm sure if you look at the best sellers right now on Etsy or Amazon, you will find some, but I feel like it's easier to get a sale in a sense if you have a phrase that kind of evokes an emotional response, has something funny to it, and it does show from most people that I speak to anyway. And you have a lot of students as well, right, in your course, in your community. I'm guessing, do you know anything from them? Like, it might be the same for them as well?
Yeah, I do. I recently, last year, I just had the course, and I've got the community as well, which has been really cool. I have found that I think a lot of people just getting into the business, they only really want to use AI. and they want to basically create their entire design using AI, which is fine. I just think that, like we just talked about, when you're able to add the text and you're able to, I think people, when they buy a product like a t-shirt, like a mug, they want to show their personality, or they're buying it as a gift for someone and they want they want to reflect that person's interests and personality. And I don't think you can do that better than with text, because a graphic itself, yes, I mean, obviously a graphic can help get that across, but the text is what I feel like really ties it all together. And so I think that what I've seen is that the new, like the beginners getting into the business that say like, yeah, I'm going to learn how to create sayings and slogans and stylize them well. Those are the students that tend to do best. Like those are the beginners who tend to see sales sooner and grow their skill faster, because they're kind of understanding all these elements where it's not just the graphic, it's the person and the way that you stylize that whole listing, the whole product, like all of that matters. And so it's not just like, how can I get this done with AI? Like, how can I do this as fast as possible with the least amount of effort? Like the intention is good to automate, but that's kind of what I found.
Yeah, I think people, from what I can tell as well, a lot of newcomers tend to rely on it too much. Like you can, like almost anyone can create really pretty designs with AI, but it's not, people aren't just buying designs because they're pretty, right? And I think if you only rely on AI, even for things like the phrases as well, the phrase ideas, I think AI can also produce a lot of rubbish. And if you just go with whatever it says, you're not necessarily going to get sales, even if it looks pretty, right? How come you don't add the text with AI though? I do remember that Midjourney used to always struggle with like writing, I don't know, 2 words with 8 letters in total, and it would mess it up. Whereas other tools like Ideogram, Chat, they're definitely a lot more accurate. But I would think by now they've caught up to that, haven't they?
Yeah. So first, just to touch on the other point you made, is like, also if you're just asking like, hey, Chat, give me a list of sayings for my products, like it's probably giving everyone the same list. So
Or very similar.
Or very similar. So it's not like you're going to get some gold that, you haven't seen anywhere else. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Midjourney has gotten better with the text, but I tend to, and funnily enough, like there was a design that I made for a video. It said later, and then it had an alligator. So it was like a play on words, but I accidentally posted that for sale in my shop while I was recording the video, and it sold. It sold the next day. And I was like, that was an entirely AI design that I just made for a video, just for fun, to kind of explain how to use ChatGPT. It was a ChatGPT design. So it can do it, especially like ChatGPT, I think, does it better than Midjourney still. But to me, like one of the core things that I guess has just done well for me is I've learned the exact fonts and how to size those fonts, and how like which font combinations do really well when I'm creating a product listing for Etsy specifically. And so that is something that, an AI can get close. But when you're doing like a specific design, I tend to come back and use the same fonts, and I tend to use the same combinations and everything. So for me personally, like I guess I don't need to use the AI. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work. I just have a system for it that for me has worked better.
Yeah, if it's already working, why change it? And I do agree that even though like I talk a lot about AI on my channel, you do, that doesn't mean everything has to be AI. Sometimes there is other ways that are easier and quicker or less friction. And if it's having the font in a very specific look and layout, and you already have that template, then leave it that way and just use the AI graphics and place them in the middle of the template, and that's it. Rather than having to regenerate or reprompt ChatGPT 15 times and waiting 2 minutes each time for it to generate. I think sometimes, there is definitely a point of doing things manually. It's just that if you're doing the graphics themselves manually, I think that's where you're wasting a lot of time. I think that's kind of the core there, where we think people would fall behind. If they don't, if they still go to Illustrator, blank canvas, and then hand draw, which you can do, but it's so much easier to do it now with AI. Do you use it to come up with design ideas then? I'm guessing not for phrases, right? But do you ever like do anything to help you brainstorm?
One of the areas that I think AI will have a hard time replacing humans in is coming up with truly like original ideas. I think it can help you expand on your current ideas. And so I guess the way that I tend to, like my flow of work tends to be, I pick a niche that I'm going to make product designs for, and then I do research to see what products look like in that niche. And then I will go start making my designs. And like I said, I will create graphic elements that I can use along with text, or sometimes it is just a combination of those graphic elements for the product designs. And I think when I use AI, if I'm going to use it to help me like ideate and come up with more variations or things, I will typically just ask it, what are some like more variations that I could add to this design? Or what are some other sayings similar to this that I could consider using? And things like that are like the way that I tend to give it my version and then see what it thinks or suggests for a different direction I could go in. I don't typically start with, hey, give me a list of ideas, or give me, give me the best sayings. It can help you get started for sure. But I think that, as you know, like at a super high level, like everyone's going to be making the same design. If you just start by asking like, what's the best saying? Then everyone gets the same saying, and then everyone uses the same font that it recommends. Like, you're going to get the exact same product. So that's where I tend to like add a little variation, where I start the creation process and then I ask it to help me iterate off of that to get more ideas.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's exactly what I would do as well, is you feed it a reference, and that way it gives you way better results than just starting off blank. While you were explaining that, I was trying to think of like an analogy to this. Maybe it's like if you were to ask ChatGPT how to get fit, and it gives you like a training plan, but the training plan doesn't fit your situation whatsoever. Like, you might have some dietary requirements, maybe you have a completely different starting off point than the person has in mind, and you just follow it as is, but it doesn't really apply to you, right? So feeding it a lot of data in advance of what you actually need, what your actual goals are, and your situation will get you a way better diet plan or workout or fitness plan, whatever it is, than just starting with the basic question of, hey, how do I get fit? Maybe that's a comparison. I don't know.
Well, and I think that's exactly right, because just like, as you know, the whole vibe, I think, even between designs that like your best seller on Amazon is not going to look the exact same way as your best seller on Etsy. They just don't. The designs are different, and the mock-ups are different. And so I think that, and sometimes even like the product themselves, like itself is different. For example, if you're selling a t-shirt on Etsy, it's much harder to sell the Gildan t-shirt. Like the Etsy shopper wants the Comfort Colors or the Bella Canvas t-shirt. Whereas on eBay and on Amazon and on Shopify, you can sell the Gildan t-shirt and people don't care as much. It's because like the profile is different. And so when you're just at a super high level and you're not giving the AI that data about yourself and your market, it's going to have a much harder time giving you, ideas and information and resources and images that can actually help you. And it might actually kind of like turn you in the opposite direction, because you might be creating a product for a different platform and not really even know it.
Amazon literally added Comfort Colors recently, like that oversized style that does really well on Etsy, and in comparison, no one's buying it.
Right.
I've had a handful of sales, but it's never going to beat out the standard T-shirt, which is fairly basic, like your Gildan. I don't know. I don't think it's actually Gildan, but that kind of style of shirt, and that's just what Amazon customers love. When did you start with print on demand, and why?
I got started back in 2019, coming off of about 8 months of trying to do the traditional Facebook ads, AliExpress drop shipping that was super popular in 2017, 18, 19, 20. So anyway, I after like 8 months of trying probably about like 6 different shops, like I made 6 pretty solid attempts and I sucked at it. And I lost pretty much all the money that I had saved up from my day job doing that. I was 19 at the time, so it was like not the worst deal, but I was still like, what the heck do I do? Kind of feeling a little lost there. I was like, I'm not sure where I should go. And I knew that like the traditional drop shipping, it wasn't going to really work for me, at least the way that I was approaching it. And I tried some other businesses around that time. But what I ultimately found was that I needed a way to be able to sell products online with a profit without, spending all of my money running ads. That was kind of the thing that I realized. And so, long story short, kind of summarize what happened over the next like 6 months, but I tried to go into the real estate business to become like a realtor, and I had no idea what I was doing. Because I was just like, I like heard like Graham Stephan on YouTube say that being a real estate agent was the best business. And so I was like, this is what I'm doing.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So I got my real estate license, and right after that, COVID hit. And so the pandemic shut everything down and made it a lot harder to be a real estate agent because I couldn't, be in the room with people. The offices that I was working at shut down. You weren't allowed to hold open houses or anything. So it was very difficult. So I was basically inside, like, what am I going to do? So I started creating like marketing packets for myself on Canva. And one day when I was researching like what I should put in these marketing packets, I found myself on Etsy, like referencing what other marketing packets had in them. And I was like, I saw down below, I was like, oh, this, real estate packet has like 3,000 reviews on it. And I was like, and it's $50. So in my head, I just started doing that math. And so it took me about a week to get that first marketing packet complete, but then I posted it for sale as a PDF. And probably about a week later, it ended up selling. And that was the first time I had ever made a sale online for a profit because I didn't run any ads to it. So I was like, oh, I'm onto something here. So because I realized by using Etsy's like massive customer base and their organic search, if I posted the right products for sale, I could get sales without paying to run ads. And so from there, I started listing face masks, which were also really popular at the time, obviously. Printify had just released like their print-on-demand face masks. So what I would do is I would find memes that I thought were funny, and I would just upload them to the mask, post it for sale, and that absolutely killed on Etsy. For a few months. After a couple months, like obviously sales started to go down as they weren't as relevant. People weren't just buying them as much. So once those sales started to decline, I kind of realized it was more of a trend, and I needed to figure out a more sustainable way to make sales. But in doing that, I learned that I could sell products through print on demand on Etsy without paying to run ads. And so from there, I started doing a similar thing where I'd post memes on shirts and I would sell those. And from there, that's kind of where I expanded my business. I opened a couple more shops, and very similar, I would sell digital products and print on demand products on Etsy. And that was the business. And so I just kind of locked in the rest of the pandemic. And from there, I kind of understood that it was a numbers game, and uploading more products was really what grew the shop, especially using the organic search. And that's what ended up working for me, taking off.
Awesome. That's a really cool story. So you actually started with digital downloads in a sense. That was like your first success. And are you still running like a hybrid? Are you still doing both, or have you pivoted to one of the two?
I still do both. I kind of realized that a digital product is very similar to a print-on-demand product, especially from the seller point of view, because at the end of the day, you're creating the design or you're creating the download, still all digital, and it's just what the customer receives that's a little different. And so for me, it's a very, very similar business model. I think when people watch a video, they think it's, completely different, but in reality, it can be very similar, where you're selling digital products or you're selling, a pre-made, a print-on-demand product. It's essentially the same thing.
The same experience for this seller, right? I mean, of course, the process in the back end is different because one of the designs gets sent off and printed, but you don't even see that. So yeah, there's not too much of a difference, I guess. They are very complementary. I think a lot of people out there also probably don't realize if you have a lot of t-shirt designs, or maybe things that you did design and never uploaded, because with AI it's so easy to design now, you could probably resell them as well on Etsy. Like, there is a market for digital designs that some people could tap into if they're in the POD world, and it is fairly simple, the transition. But you've mentioned a few times now that the number of listings, the volume definitely plays a big part, and I want to talk about that a little bit more. And you actually have an automation tool as well that you've built, right? Tell me a little bit about that tool.
Yeah. So the automation tool that I have is called Prelist. So I'm wearing a different shirt. This one says Listing View, but that's for a different program. Prelist is an automation that lets you bulk upload product designs to the product you're selling in Printify. So we kind of talked about how we both actually like to batch out products. We like to have a group of designs targeting a specific niche and then upload them kind of all together. There's several reasons we probably both do that. For one, it's easier to design multiple designs at once instead of switching between, creating designs for different niches. You also end up reusing a lot of the same fonts and graphics and prompts. And you also you can reuse things like your SEO research. You can reuse keywords across those listings as well. So there's several reasons for why you want to batch and bulk upload. And the tool that I built is exactly for that. What I realized back in 2020 was that eventually I got to the point where I had a system where I was like, all right, I do need to create 20 designs around the same niche and upload them. And it was taking forever. Anyone who has used Printify knows that. Like, dragging the design on, sizing it, and then making a separate design for the black and white version, or if you have multiple colors, it takes a very long time. So back then AI tools were still kind of not very good, but I watched some YouTube videos and I figured out how to kind of custom code my own version of an uploader that would do this for me. It was very bad. It worked on my machine, but you couldn't use it on anyone else's computer. It wasn't coded well. But fast forward to like 2023, and I had it built out. And so now it lives in Prelist, and it essentially allows you to grab all of your design files, drag them into an uploader, into the Printify uploader, and it will essentially reference the details that you already have saved in one of your existing Printify products that we call a template, so that when you upload those new ones, you'll have the same pricing details, the same like color variations if you're selling a shirt, and you're also able to apply keywords and tags to all of those uploads as well.
So you don't need like XML files or something like that. No Excel, no spreadsheets. It's just you drag the designs, you drop them, and then your Printify template gets applied to all of them. That's the idea.
Exactly. So if you have, let's say you have a listing in Printify that's for a mug or a t-shirt, when you select to use that as your template in Prelist and you upload all your designs, you still have control when you're uploading over like the size and position. You still have control over the product titles and things like that. So you can still you kind of bulk edit them before you push them to Printify. Which is nice because then if you're adding the titles in Prelist, it'll also like keep those titles from Printify to Etsy or Printify to Amazon or TikTok or wherever you're pushing those products to, which is a little nice because if you just upload them to Printify and you don't title it, when you push it, like the titles will never sync back over, which is a little frustrating if you're selling. So yeah, that's exactly what it does.
All right, so you kind of have a central listing that can be reused in different places. Do you have, just so I don't misunderstand it, do you have things like TikTok, Amazon built in as well? Or is it just Etsy?
So the Printify uploader will allow you to upload to any type of Printify account.
Yeah, because it's Printify, you can utilize whatever Printify integrates with. Smart. Nice. Yeah, it sounds like anyone who is right now exclusively using Printify to upload, I could be stupid not to at least try it out, this tool.
Yeah, it does. If the condition is basically if you're batching your products, if you're creating more than 5 designs, it will save you time in uploading. And it can also handle stuff like I said, if you have a design for the front of your shirt and the back of your shirt, you can upload both of those. Or if you have a neck label that you want to use across all of your uploads, you can save the neck label there. You can do black and white versions. So yeah, it is pretty good. If you're uploading like a few a day, or if you ever have a batch more than 5, it's definitely going to save you time. But if you're just getting started, and you haven't even made a listing, you need to be batching your designs for it to help you. But when you do, it definitely saves you time.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because I do think a lot of people that listen to this or that watch our YouTube videos, I think there's always a big fraction of people that have just found POD or just found digital downloads. And it's like there is a lot of tool names and things flying around. It is a good idea to learn how to do it yourself first before you jump into an automation tool. Because if you don't know how to even do it yourself, you're probably going to mess something up in the automation, right? I would always suggest that and try and stick to a small amount of tools to begin with. You don't have to subscribe to 10 different ones straight away. It does come with time. Or do you agree with that? Or
yeah, absolutely. I think, like I said, I think it took me that first digital product I listed. It took me like a week to make the product, like a full day to figure out how to post it for sale. And that was just one listing. Once I started doing face masks and other products, I got a lot faster at doing it. So the process became less intimidating. But yeah, you got to post the first listing. The first 10 took me like 3 days to figure out. And now I can do 10 in like a couple hours, from start to finish. So it's just you gotta figure out the process first, and then once you get it down, it definitely makes sense to add the tools. But just to start, you can get started with a design tool and Printify, or
I think if I remember correctly, I uploaded maybe 7,000 or 8,000 designs to Amazon before I started using like a full-on automation tool. It's just nuts. I should have probably started sooner, but I was only using Chrome extension to kind of help a little bit with the upload. But yeah, you don't have to wait that long. But just to say, we went through the hard work as well initially, and didn't just go straight to all the expensive tools. Does your tool have a trial? Actually, I've never had a look at it, so I'm just curious if we can leave something in the description for people.
Yeah, for sure. We'll leave something down below, and it does have a trial. So you can use the free trial. It also has a pre-list, has a lifetime offer. So you can get like lifetime access for $67. So it kind of, if you're going to use it, like if you test it out and you're like, yeah, this is what I want to use, then you can cancel the trial and you can get the lifetime offer. Either way, we'll put something down in the description and we'll make that work.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I love automation tools, so I'll have to try out as well. If you had to imagine starting out again, like right now, you're fresh to this, what are some of the things that you would do besides obviously what we've said? Don't buy all the tools, try out the process yourself. Like, what would be your approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. Do I get to keep all of the skills that I have right now, or is it kind of starting back from scratch?
I guess with all the experience you have now, what would be your plan of action?
Yeah, well, I think that what we do, which is sell products online, I think that's the best way to make money online. I think that no matter what you do, selling products is the way to make money, and whether you do that through an Etsy shop and digital products or print on demand products, or whether you do it on TikTok or on YouTube, I think that learning to sell products is the best way to make money. And so I would definitely start with that. And I think I would do a very similar thing to what ended up working for me, assuming I didn't have a ton of money, because I probably wouldn't if I, had to start over.
I would definitely say that the situation is low budget, but you know what you know now, so you could kind of shortcut some of the steps.
Yeah. And I think that that's really key, is like knowing what I know now, I would be able to launch products that did well, and I would be able to get sales on those and reinvest all that money into growing the business faster. And I think that that's what I would do. And I think that doing it on Etsy is a great option. I think that also it kind of depends on like who you are and what you want to do. I mean, like selling on Shopify can also work. And like what you do, selling on Amazon can also work. It's like, it's not that one is the only way. It's kind of like what's going to be your expertise and what resonates with you. And so I think I would probably go back to Etsy. And I would also, one thing that I've learned is that documenting the process and sharing that experience with others through content is not only like very rewarding, but it's also pretty fulfilling, because you do get to share tips that help people genuinely, like help people actually, change their own lives. And so I would start another business selling products online, and I would document the process with videos.
It also makes you learn faster in a sense, because you have to really understand it to teach other people. All right, that's kind of a little, I think, hidden advantage of having a YouTube channel is, in order to teach, you have to understand how it works yourself. But what about, let's say, the types of niches you would enter? I'm curious, because I do see a lot of people starting out that see, it's Halloween in a few weeks, I need to upload Halloween designs. Like, what would you do if you started right now? What sorts of niches would you target?
If I chose to sell t-shirts again, which is the specific product that's made me the most money that I've sold, I think that the way that obviously you make money with t-shirts is by creating designs for a lot of different niches. So I would keep that in mind, and my process would be to every day create some evergreen type designs. Those are going to be things that sell all year round. They're not necessarily seasonal, and they're not necessarily a trend. So those are going to be things like life events, for example. You've got weddings and birthdays and retirement and graduation. You've got things like, I guess I would consider sports evergreen, even though it's a little seasonal. Like sports can be evergreen. People buy products year round. I would start with that, and I would also pay close attention to different trends in the market, specifically with things like holidays, but also things like politics can be very profitable niches because people are so passionate about it. You know, no matter what side you're on, people get so amped up and passionate about their political views, or like protest type shirts. Those are great niches to target to get quick sales whenever a current event happens. And it's always going on. So like there's always some new political thing happening that you can jump on, and people are, it's, the other thing about that is with something like that niche, you know, when there's a new trend, it starts with zero competition because no one has created products for that trend yet. So that's why it's so powerful, because when there's a new, you know, world event, whatever it happens to be, when you're some of the first people to create products for it, you're the only one that they can buy from. And so you can get a ton of sales that way. So I would start looking at those types of niches where there's always cycles. There's always new people coming into the market. And I think that you can make a lot of sales that way. That's probably the direction that I would go starting over from scratch.
Do you do like 50-50, like 50 evergreen, 50 trends, newer things, or?
I tend to like evergreen more than I like trends, because my business has just been more sustainable when I do evergreen. Like when you really, like, it might be a super niche product, but when you lock it in and like you're the person that makes sales for that specific niche, your product just sells like 3 times a day, every day. It's like when you get a bunch of those types of products, that's better than having one product that sells, you know, 10,000 times and then it dies. Because if your business is just based on those, you've got to keep cranking those trending products out, and you'll never like be able to take a breath and be like, all right, I can go on vacation. Like if you're always just, you know, having to chase the trend. So I think trends are awesome because they can like add on top of your evergreen. But otherwise, I'm a big fan of the evergreen.
Yeah, I agree. I think trends, they are good, and they can sometimes easily make a big difference in terms of daily sales. But in my opinion, they shouldn't be your focus. And you should always stick to more evergreen because it is just more sustainable. It's less headache. You don't have to constantly pay attention to the news cycle or try and predict what's going to be the trend that stays, the one that you should enter. So yeah, that's interesting, and especially if you are batching a lot of designs, you're uploading a lot. You don't want to do all that effort for something to last a week or two, right? You want it to be more sustainable than that. Something I hear a lot from newer people in the space as well, whether it's comments or people in my communities, is they have, you know, starter POD or digital downloads that they've been uploading, say 200, 300 products in their first few months, but they've only had one sale or maybe 2 sales, and it's been a quarter of a year. What do you say to those people? I say to those people, like, I know that it sucks because that was me for a long time. I mean, I briefly mentioned I started print on demand after I had about 8 months of failure with the traditional dropshipping business model, which no one gets to see because I didn't make videos about it back then because I was failing. So I didn't want to make videos about losing all my money. Also, when I started posting my products on Etsy, it took me a very, very long time. It took me a week to get my first listing up, and it took me like 3 days to get my next 10 listings up. And so the learning curve at the beginning is very difficult. On top of that, many of my products that I listed in the beginning were very bad. So by uploading a large quantity of products over time, I was able to not only build up the catalog, cover more searches and more niches, but I got better as a designer. And so I think it's easy to like look back and be like, hey, like, oh, I just, you know, posted some products for sale and now I make money, and it feels that way, especially the outside looking in. But
if your first products don't sell, the answer that's like hard to accept is that you might have to, think about what you didn't do exactly right. What area can you improve on to make it work? Because ultimately it is up to you to make a better design or use a better mock-up or target your SEO a little differently. And that's really what it comes down to, is those iterations over time. That's what makes you better. And so putting a specific number on it, like whether it's 300 or your first 100 or your first 1,000, like you will get better over time if you're willing to iterate and improve. And so I think that's the willingness to improve is what really separates the people who win long term and the people who are going to get really frustrated and give up.
I think it's so similar in so many other things. It's just that with print on demand, if you're putting up a few hundred designs, you are expecting, or you're setting yourself up with the expectation of making some money from it. So I totally understand why that is frustrating. It took me a long time to make regular sales on Amazon, like months and months. I think my first organic sale that wasn't by a friend or by myself was probably something like 3 months as well. It was really, really sluggish. But if you think about it, for example, you've never touched a basketball in your life and you pick it up for the first time, you'll take 100 shots and most of them are probably going to miss, right? And with time that gets better. But even if you're like top level NBA, whatever, you're still going to miss some shots. So that never goes away, just your accuracy gets better. With basketball, obviously you're not hoping for money, so you're not really going to be that bothered if you miss a lot of your first shots. But with print on demand, it's very similar in that sense. Like I still upload designs that don't sell. It still happens. It's just that the rate has become smaller, or I'm more easily able to predict what will sell, what won't sell, just through the experience. And unfortunately, it just takes time for most people, unless you have like in your example before, you already have experience. You can't really shortcut that very well. You can be lucky and hit some political trend like on the nail or something and do really well in your first few weeks and months, but it's definitely a rare occasion, I think, for beginners. So don't take it too hard on yourself, because almost everyone is in the same boat and it does take time to get out of that.
Absolutely. And I mean, also another perspective is that whether you're doing print on demand or you're making YouTube videos or you're honestly doing anything, it takes a lot of reps and it takes more than you expect to do anything. Because a lot of people, I haven't talked about this too much on my main channel, but before I started the channel that I have now, I uploaded over 100 hour-long podcasts on a different channel. And
oh my God, 100 podcasts.
100 podcasts. And so what I told myself is, like, I knew long-term I wanted to do YouTube, and I didn't know what it was going to look like. I didn't know exactly how it was going to fall into place, but I decided that every single day I was going to record and upload like a podcast video where I was just talking. And obviously they didn't do well. They'd get like 2 views or 10 views, but it was the repetitions and the commitment over time that changed things for me and that allowed me to grow my current channel even better. So like, there's no such thing as it coming like super easy. You know what I mean? Like you have to put in the reps over time for anything to work. So when it feels like the grass is greener on the other side, like, oh, I should be doing, TikTok shop instead, or I should be doing, coaching or whatever it is, real estate, like it's still hard. So just find something that you can do and just do it.
Really good advice, and that's pretty inspiring that you uploaded that many podcasts to, I'm guessing, a channel which now doesn't exist, right? Have you closed it? Or
I have the channel. All the videos were like delisted because when I started this one, I was like, oh, that's embarrassing. I should hide all those. So they're out there. They're just in a different channel. Yeah.
When I was a teenager, I also used to upload videos to a gaming channel. I never intended for it to like make a lot of money, but that also never took off or anything, but it did teach me a lot of things about editing and YouTube in general. Even though I was pretty rubbish at the time, it still taught me some things that helped me out with this channel. So it's similar in the sense that sometimes doing something badly or with not enough success, or not the success you hope for, will help you out in a different venture. Well, another project that you've been working on recently is a research tool, which is, I think, the t-shirt you're wearing right now, Listing View. Yeah?
Yes.
And there is a bunch of research tools that people do know for Etsy. So I'm curious, what makes your tool different?
Yeah. So again, kind of coming back to selling on Etsy and that being my main source of income and my kind of journey. One of the issues that I had was I found it very difficult to use some of the research tools that were out there. And maybe not necessarily difficult, but I didn't know like how well the information was collected for those tools. So for example, one of the main areas and the main reasons why I started it was because there wasn't a tool that would tell you an accurate estimation of how many monthly sales products were getting on Etsy. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the traditional way that these tools would calculate it is they would estimate total sales for a product listing, which is pretty easy to do because the sales data for a shop at the shop level is public. So then they're estimating based on things like reviews and favorites and views, how many sales to attribute to each listing. So you can get an estimation of how many sales a listing has. Then what they would do is they would say, a listing has been available for 10 months. We're going to divide that total sales number by 10 months. And so I realized this when I was, moving on from selling face masks, because what I realized was these tools were saying face masks were selling like 50,000 times a month, but they weren't selling at all. They had just calculated 100,000 sales divided by however many months. You see what I mean? So that was the first reason why I was like, we need a better way to estimate sales, because it needs to be relevant and up to date versus just like, estimating it across the life of the product or the shop. Like that doesn't work. So that was the first thing we did, is we built a calculation that would attribute sales by the month. Mm-hmm. So all of the products in Listing View, all of the shops in Listing View have sales by the month. So you can go and look at the graphs and the charts and view sales over time. So now if you ever look at face masks, they stopped selling like 3 years ago. No one's buying them anymore.
No, that makes sense. That's definitely a big downside, because in that case, even things like Halloween designs, they would still show as doing really well in January, just because they're still benefiting from the high sales volume in October, which is not really what you want to see. That's really cool.
Yeah. So one other YouTube inspired thing that we did was on YouTube. One of the best ways to get really high quality ideas for videos is using a plugin that will tell you the outlier score for videos. You may be familiar because you do YouTube yourself. And it basically calculates how well a specific video performs for the channel that it's in. And that's relevant because if you or I posted a video and it gets 1 million views, that's an incredible video. But if Mr. Beast posted a video that got 1 million views, that would be a terrible video. So it normalizes performance based on the shop, or based on the channel. So we built out a very similar feature to show outlier score for Etsy shops. So if a shop that gets 100,000 sales a month posts a new t-shirt, all of their new t-shirts are probably going to sell to some extent. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best to reference for your own ideas. So the outlier score helps normalize performance for the shop that they're posted in. So if a new shop posts a listing and they have no sales, but then they post a listing and it gets, 1,000 sales or 10,000 sales or whatever, it's going to have a really high outlier score so that that listing is obviously performing better than all the other listings for that shop. So we've done some things similar to those that help you hopefully make better decisions when you're doing research. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. It sounds like that will more easily let you spot unicorn designs or unicorn products, regardless of the monthly sales estimates, regardless of how much revenue they're making. It's within each shop, there are some unicorns that are performing better than the rest, and you can spot those best sellers per shop very easily, I'm guessing, with that feature.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. That's really good. No, I don't think I've ever heard of any tool doing that. That's really interesting. Does that have a free trial as well for people that want to try it out? Or
Yes. Yeah, you can create your account completely for free for Listing View. And you can play around and see all the tools. It's just that some of the sales data and some of the calculations you have to upgrade your account to access.
okay.
That's kind of the deal over at Listing View.
That's cool. So you get some of the features for free, some of them are locked. Okay, that makes sense. I'll have a link to that down below as well then if anyone wants to try it out, see what it looks like. Another thing I'm really interested in is you obviously have a lot of things going on. You run multiple Etsy stores, you have a community. We've talked about 2 tools that you own or that you work on. Do you have any advice for people on how to be more productive and get this much done if they have the ambition to start multiple stores as well, start a YouTube channel perhaps, which is another massive time sink?
Yeah, the YouTube thing takes a ton of time, doesn't it? I think everyone struggles with productivity. I definitely do, but I've kind of come up with a few things that help me manage my time and be more productive overall. And so first and foremost, I think sleep is a super underrated element of productivity. You have to get enough sleep every night, because if you don't have energy, you can't focus. And if you can't focus, the work that you do isn't going to be low quality work. And so it's you might as well not even work. If you're just sitting there kind of idle, it's tough to get stuff done. So I'm a big fan of getting a full night of sleep, whatever that looks like. I think that's really important. But more practical and tactical day-to-day stuff, I have an ongoing list of probably 50 things that I could be doing at any time. But a lot of those are not super important. A lot of them would take a few minutes, or, they're not even worth doing at all, right? Some stuff you can just ignore and move on from. So every day I try and make a list of 3 things to do. They'll be the 3 most important things that I'll do that day. And so the reason I choose 3 is because if I'm working 8 hours or 10 hours, I will get between 2 to 3 chunks of time that I can really dive in and work on something. Because what's really difficult to do is switch between 2 tasks. So if I'm trying to, plan out something for a software, or I'm trying to record a YouTube video, I can't really switch between those 2. Or if I'm thinking about editing or a thumbnail, or I need to answer emails, it's really not efficient to do those at the same time. And so by choosing 3 and just deciding I'm going to spend my, the next 3 hours on this one task, it avoids, I think that the technical term is context switching, which is switching between 2 things or more that you're doing. Because each time you switch, you end up losing about 15 to 30 minutes of that deep focus work, because it takes you 15 to 30 minutes to get fully invested and fully start, get really locked into whatever you're doing. So those are kind of, I think, my highest impact tips for productivity and getting a lot of stuff done.
Makes a lot of sense. I think what you're trying to say there is if you task switching between multiple things, accumulatively they'll take say 5 hours. But if you just focused on one at a time, not only would it be more quality because you focused on just one thing, but you probably also get it done quicker because you don't have to constantly restart thinking, oh, what was I doing here? What was I doing there?
Yeah,
And not
exactly.
so scattered. Yeah, I like that advice. That's really good. What do you think about, or what do you do with your phone during the day?
I used to have like a couch behind me, and I would like leave it on the couch as far away from me as I could. Now I just put it in the drawer in my desk, which is not as good of an option. Like I find myself going to my phone. If it rings, if it vibrates, like it kind of again takes you out of your flow state of your focus, and then you want to think about that. So I right now I just leave it in my desk. Otherwise, I probably need to put it further away from me, to be honest. But
Yeah,
what do you do?
I used to leave it in a different room. Since probably like a year ago, I've started putting it into what's called focus mode. I don't know, probably Apple has an equivalent to it, where it turns off your notifications, it turns off the apps that you tell it to turn off. So I only have apps enabled that I use for work, like Google Drive or the YouTube Studio or something like that, or my school community. So those apps I can access. The actual like YouTube home feed I can't access in the focus mode, or WhatsApp I can't access in the focus mode. That's kind of the idea, and that's on throughout the day, and then in the evening it automatically unlocks. So I do have it here. It's just pretty useless unless I turn that focus mode off. But yeah, I wanted to ask that question because it's obviously like everyone has a phone. It's usually right next to you, and it is usually really distracting, and also it does create that kind of task switching. Like how many times do you get lost in a notification on your phone and then think, oh, what was I even doing on the PC like 20 minutes later? And I'm not saying I'm perfect with that either. I definitely do that. But I think trying, at least making a conscious effort to try and minimize the distraction of your phone can make a big difference in productivity.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the phone is the single best and worst thing to have next to you. You know what I mean? Like, it's tough.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that I think is worth mentioning or might be important to people watching?
I think we covered a lot of stuff here today. I think we talked about a lot of topics, but I think, I guess for the people that are earlier on in their journey with print on demand, with selling stuff online in any area that they're at, I guess the only thing I'd want to mention or leave is that I have found the most success with just being consistent over time. And I think that consistency is the one thing that really makes a difference over time. And so, that's kind of the only last thought or idea that I have on my mind.
I think that's a good message to end on. So thanks a lot, Alek, for coming on. I'll leave links to the tools that we talked about, and of course your YouTube channel down below as well. For anyone who wants to check Alek out, he's got a really amazing YouTube channel, lots of AI content as well. I know a lot of my subscribers are interested in that, so check him out, leave him a follow, and thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great talking to you.